All right. So what I was saying was that, yeah, so we did the imperfect in the video, and the slides are here now. These are the slides, individuals, all the slides that are in the video. And then what we're going to do today is subordinate clauses. We talked a little bit about the relative pronoun. So we're going to actually go into it in more detail, and then we're going to come back to the imperfect there. So the first thing I did last time was, first of all, point out that in terms of declining the relative pronoun, it's not going to be an issue because it is an Omicron eta declension um, pronoun. So it looks a lot like, the endings are the same as the article. And it looks a lot like the article, in fact. The main difference is that the nominative of masculine, feminine have an accent, right? Masculine is Haas, so that's already different to begin with, and it has an accent. Hey, the feminine looks exactly like the article, only thing it has an accent, it carries an acute accent, right? And then the neuter article is ta, but the relative pronoun is ha. So Haas masculine, hey feminine, ha neuter, and then it declines as you would expect with Haas, u, o, on, hoi, on, tois, us, rather, and then hey, ace, hey, a, ein, and then hi, on, hon, heis, has. Rough breathings, all rough breathing. And then ha, hu, ho, ha, ha, hon, hois, ha. Right? So that's how you form them. So forming it should not be a difficulty because we know the endings already. Okay. The issue is really to do with how to use it, right? And so that's what we want to talk about today. And yeah, so that's why I had this PowerPoint here. All right. And so we have to figure out or focus on the differences between what we call simple sentences, and coordinated sentences, and compound sentences, right? So, as this is from Mastronardi, as he points out, look, a simple sentence contains just one subject verb relationship, right? So you've got the sailor leaves the marketplace, one subject, and he's doing the verb. That's it, right? So compound sentences have more than one verb with perhaps more than one subject, right? So he says sentences consist of two or more independent clauses joined together, usually by a conjunction like and, but, or, right? So here we have the woman waves and her daughter waves back, right? So these are two compound sentences. They're joined together by a conjunction and, no problem. And then yeah, so here's another example. He's giving different kinds of conjunction and but and or, how they work together. Now, there's also a more complex relationship between clauses or sentences that you want to join sentences, and that's using some kind of subordinating conjunction. And this we call a complex sentence. So complex sentence has two sentences and they're related to each other. And one is more important than the other, hence the idea of subordinating, right? So usually the subordinated sentence is introduced with a conjunction. Here, the first one, when the sailor arrived, so it's introduced by the temporal conjunction, when they called a meeting. Okay, it's main clause. They called a meeting when the sailor arrived. So two ideas. Sailor arrived they called a meeting, we're putting them together, we're saying that it's in a temporal relationship, that when one happened, the other happened. That's how we set it up, okay? Another one, the messenger who came yesterday told a different story, right? In English, we have who came yesterday, right? So it's a relative clause. This is what this is. Who is the relative pronoun in English for nominative. And in fact, I said yesterday, the relative pronoun in English is one of the places where the case actually appears, right? So we say who when it's the subject, we say whom when it's the object, we say to whom when it's in the indirect object, and we say whose when it's a genitive. So we actually have case in English in certain words, pronouns usually, and the relative pronoun is a very good case of where that is happening. Okay. So here, yeah, so we have this relative pronoun, relative clause, who came yesterday. And then we have another one, which where you have a subordinate clause and it's coming off of some verb of saying, right? Called an indirect statement or question or something like that. So here, the rhapsode asked the muse to sing about how Achilles destroyed the Greeks. So how Achilles destroyed the Greeks is the subordinate clause, right? He asked her to sing about it, and that's it, right? So Achilles' wrath destroyed the Greeks. The rhapsode asked the muse to sing about what, how that happened. Okay, so so these are subordinated clauses, and we can also think about conditions, right? If the sailor arrives, they will have a meeting. So the if clause is the subordinate clause, and the main clause is what they're going to do, right? So because, right? Because the sailor arrived, they called a meeting, right? So causal, conditional, while or when, temporal, although the sailor arrived, they still called the meeting, right? So these are conditional or sort of subordinated clauses, and the conjunctions in English tend to tell you how that subordinate clause relates to the main sentence. Okay. All right, so let's focus on the relative clause, because that one, in English, we only have one way to do it, which is who, whom, whose, to whom, right? That's the only way we do it, but Greeks have a lot of options because it's Greek. All right. So, so yes, the relative clause is an independent clause that serves as an adjective modifying a noun. So already we already know what that is. Like, so if we have the pretty girl, right? That's an adjective modifying the noun, right? The pretty girl. So the one we had before was the messenger who came yesterday, right? That's modifying the messenger. And we already know from what we've seen before that things like that can actually be in the sandwich situation in Greek, right? We've seen that we could put came yesterday, whatever that is, and the came yesterday messenger. We know we can do that. Like that's a thing Greeks do, right? So it's attributive is what he's getting at here, right? So yes, we can modify the noun, and in English we call it the relative clause, and when we use the relative pronoun, right? So when we're using the relative pronoun, then we have a relative clause. But the idea of the subordinated relative clause in Greek can be expressed a couple of ways, right? But here we're going to focus on when the relative pronoun is actually used. So he says it can be used with a relative pronoun, or you can sometimes have the relative adverb or conjunction as we were just looking at before. So these words are called relative because thing here. They introduce the subordinate clause, and there's something in that relative clause that refers back to something in the main clause, right? So the man whom we saw looked familiar. So the man looked familiar, one sentence. We saw him, second sentence. So two sentences. We saw him. The man looked familiar. And we want to put them together, that it's the guy that we saw. He's the one that looked familiar. We would say whom we saw, right? And so the whom is what's linking the two sentences together, right? Because it is the thing that joins man as the subject of the first part, man looked familiar, and the object of what we saw is the whom, right? See that? Yeah. And so, and it's in the case, the accusative case in English, whom, because it's the object of the verb in the relative clause, right? We saw him, right? Again, that him is another one that it can also indicate case, right? He, nominative, him, accusative, right? So we saw him. Well, the man whom we saw looked familiar, right? So whom and the man refer to each other. We call that the man as the antecedent, the thing that sort of predicating the whom, right? What does whom refer back to in the main clause? Well, it refers back to the man, right? And because of that, it then has to match in case number, or it sort of in gender and number, right? It doesn't have to match case because the case is going to be dictated by its own clause, right? So in its clause, it's accusative, right? Whom we saw. But in the main clause, the man is nominative, right? The man looked familiar. He was the subject of the verb. But in the subordinate clause, he's the object of the verb, right? We saw the man. So we saw him. So the man whom we saw. Okay, so this is actually cleaning up people's English more than anything else. Like, just so you know, like from here on in, you'll never be able to use who and whom wrong afterwards. You'll be correcting people. No, it's whom. All right. So this is the thing that bothers me, right? So so we have that is more ambiguous, and that's for things. So you wouldn't say, I guess you could say, but it's kind of rude to say the man that we saw. If you wanted to just be vague, right? You could do that. But it's really that. It goes with things. So this is the thing that bothers me. Again, so this is the thing. So that's one main sentence. And then the thing bothers me. That's the other sentence, right? You're putting them together, and that is the joining pronoun that refers to the thing in both sentences. Yeah. So leave it in the place where you found it. Again, this is relative because where refers to places, right? So leave it in the place you found it, right? Where you found it. Okay. Everybody following so far? Yeah. So it shouldn't be, I mean, this is like making you think really hard about a language you naturally speak, right? So that's why it's you actually know it, but harder to deal with it. All right, so then this is again going back to the case, how they look now, right? Move my thing out of the way here. Maybe I'll just make it small. And I just disappeared. There we go. Yeah, so here we can see I just put them side by side. So you can see that they really have the same endings, right? Except for in the nominative, they have the same endings. And the difference between the definite article and the relative pronoun is the article has the tau in all the oblique cases, right? It has tu, to, ton, right? That has that, whereas in the relative, it doesn't have it. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. Okay. All right. And so if you're going to translate then, Haas or hey, or well, Haas or hey is who, right? And neuter then would be that. And then whose is the best way to deal with the genitive, whose or of whom, but whose, always try whose first, and if that doesn't work, then go of whom, and that probably work. Dative to whom or for whom, and then whom, right? So that would be how you do it, and of course it's going to be the same in the plural, right? Who, whose, to whom, or for whom, and whom, whether singular or plural. English doesn't have any distinction between the singular or the plural with the relative pronoun. All right. So far so good with that in terms of the endings. Let me see. All right. Okay, yeah. And so here, and Mastronardi points out there's some problems that could arise when you're reading if you don't pay attention to the accents. So this is why I sort of spent a lot of time in the beginning really dealing with the accents. A lot of other professors might not. Some people think just get on with it, but in the end it's harmful, I think, because at the end of the day you're like, I didn't know it was just the accent that changed the whole meaning of the word, right? So the accent is important. So here are cases where the accent is important, right? They look exactly the same, right? Haw, haw, hey, hey, hoy, hoy, hi, hi. Exactly the same, right? The only way to tell that they're different, that one is not the, but who or whom, etc., is our accent. Okay? Because the article doesn't have accent in the nominative, whereas the relative pronouns have accents all the way down. Okay? All right, so he says one must be careful, however, to recognize when a form of the article has received an accent too. That's the other thing. This has to do with the issue of the enclitics. So here we have a sentence below it. Hei xantipe, heite spacia, heite strategoi. So te is the and, but te is an enclitic. So enclitics throw accents onto the word that came before it, right? Especially if it's if it doesn't have an accent, then it will definitely throw an accent on the word, right? So that's what's happening here. The hey, that's obviously the article, but hey te with accent, that's actually the article, but te, being an enclitic, is giving it an accent, right? So it's really just another article. So Xanthippe and Hespesia and the generals, right? Okay, so that's the tricky bit. And I won't get into this bit till later. But here's some general things to think about is that, so I remember I was saying that these things go back to what's in the main sentence. So if there's sort of like a system of relating things, calling it coordination or coordinated pronouns. So here you have the direct question. Well, who did it? The first one should be tis. Where, right? Who, right? So he asked where, and then so he's saying, okay, this is the question, this is the indirect question, this is the indefinite pronoun, and then the relative pronoun that would go with it, right? So they're all, notice, related. So pu is where or at where. The indirect question, you can use the regular, we've seen that they do use just pu, but officially you would use hopu, right? So which is the relative or sorry, indirect question pronoun that goes with who. So with pu, hapu, pu again, but with no accent, meaning somewhere. So where? He asked where. Well, somewhere is the answer. Or who or hapu, the relative. He came where the house was. Right? He came to the place where the house was. All right. Or poi, to where? Hapoi. I ask you, to where are you going? Hapoi. I'm going somewhere. Poi. This the where whither he is going is to where he's going. He came to the place to where I sent him, something like that. Hapoi. Pothen, from where? So then there's the correlating hapothen. He asked where, but you can, as I said, you can use both of these, the direct question word and the indirect question word equally. But the indefinite, notice it doesn't have the accent. So from somewhere, and then the relative then, I asked him to come from the house from where I was born, something like that, right? And then pote, when, or hote, when, you'll see hote quite a bit. And then hote, at some time. And then hote and hopote, when, or precisely when. He came at the time when it was daylight or something like that, right? Pose, how? And then hopos, same thing, the question word, how's, so he asked, how did Achilles kill off Hector? You can either say pose or hopos there. He did it somehow, pose. This was the way in which, or this was how Achilles killed Hector, right? Hose and hopos over there at the end. Then tis who, right? Or he asked who is at the door, tis. So you can either say tis or hostis. Someone is at the door, tis, no accent. She told him who was at the door, hos or hostis, right? So there's a relative pronoun that goes with these answering these questions, as it were, right? Specifically. But again, this is something you have to see it in practice. Now, so as I said, the relative pronoun then is used to introduce these adjectival clauses. Because it's doing that, it needs to agree with whatever its antecedent was in terms of gender and number, right? So if it's the man who brought the food yesterday, right? The man who brought the food yesterday. In Greek, you have to be clear that the who word you're using is masculine and singular to go with the man, right? Which is masculine singular. He's subject in both sentences, right? The man who brought the food yesterday is here now, right? Then the who word will be the nominative, so hos, right? But the man whom you mentioned yesterday is not here now, right? So the man is not here now, that's nominative, he's a subject. But whom you mentioned yesterday, that's accusative. So then it would be accusative in Greek. So as long as you're in English, you're using your pronoun properly, it's pretty easy to translate into the Greek. Because if it's who, you go for the nominative. If it's whom, you go for the accusative. If it's to whom, you're going to use the dative. If it's whose, you use the genitive, right? And vice versa, going the other way as well. Like if you see the nominative, it's who. If you see the accusative, you say whom. If you see the genitive, you say whose. You see the dative, you say to whom, right? It shouldn't be too difficult. That's why he introduces it super early, because it's so common, and it's also the same effectively as in English. All right, so the soldier whom the general is striking is a coward, right? So the antecedent whom, the soldier, he's a coward, nominative in his own sentence, but he's the accusative in the relative sentence, relative clause, right? And so then it's whom that's connecting the two. All right. So then, so here is the Greek that I've got for that. So, ho stratiotes, hon, whom, right? Hon ho strategos kopte is striking, whom the general is striking. Kakos esti, he's evil or bad or coward, something like that. Okay.
It's actually very similar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we don't want to abandon the woman whom we are fleeing, right? I don't know what the context is of that, but okay. U bulometha lepein. Lepein means to abandon. So we don't want to abandon. Tain or ton anthropon, or it must be, yeah, tain anthropon, the woman. Meth haze, with whom we are fleeing. Right? So the preposition takes a genitive. So then with whom is going to be in that scenario, right? See that? Okay. All right. So, okay. So here, this is just what would we do in English here? All right. So where is the soldier X forcing me to leave behind my children? So we need to put a pronoun in here. Where is the soldier? Blank is forcing me to leave behind my children. So which one? Yeah, who? Yeah, who is forcing me to leave behind my children? So where is the soldier who's forcing me to leave behind my children? They could not see the man, blank, son was dying. Whose? Right. The woman, blank, son he will teach comes from Miletus. Whose? Yeah, the woman whose son he will teach comes from Miletus. I cannot find the woman, blank, I was going to marry. Whom, right, yeah, I can't find the woman whom I was going to marry. The girls, blank, he was intending to pursue, gave him the slip. The girls, blank, he was intending to pursue, gave him the slip. Whom, yeah, whom he was intending to pursue. They are giving arms to the man, blank, will be fleeing. Or fighting, sorry, fighting. We should look right. Yeah, who will be fighting, right? Blank, you hold dear, I hold dear too. There are many possibilities here. Yeah, you can say whom you hold dear, or what you hold dear. You could say, yeah. So whom you hold dear or what you hold dear. I think of anything other. Yeah, whatever you hold dear, right? Whomever you hold dear. All right. 3 cheers for the boys, blank. Fathers came from Athens. Whose, yeah, 3 cheers for the boys whose fathers came from Athens. And then I'm going to use a neuter here, I guess. Blank, I know, he does not know. What, yeah, what I know, he doesn't know, right? Yeah, whatever I know, he doesn't know. All right. Do you see blank I see? Yeah, what? Yeah. Do you see what I see? Right? Do you see what I it's already Christmas? All right. Okay. So let's see what I have here. Okay. All right, so now that then the other exercise. So this one we're gonna take a couple of minutes, and you guys are gonna do this one on your little boards or piece of paper. So what you want to do is join the sentences. Actually, don't use with the participle, just use with the relative clause, right? This is a dual purpose exercise because when I introduce the participle, we go back to it again. But right now we're doing relative clause. So okay. So the sentence, you've got two sentences. You don't even need to know what it means. You just need to be able to figure out what's subject, what's object, and work them, right? So ha kinesias aner estin murines, ha kinesias badidze pros tein acropolen. So we've got two sentences. One is Kinesias is the man from Myrine. And the second sentence is Kinesias is walking or sort of promenading toward the Acropolis. So you're going to join these two, replace one word with the pronoun, the relative pronoun to join the two sentences. What would it be? You're joining the two sentences. Yeah, so you definitely yeah, so what would you do then? So you've got two sentences and you're gonna replace the second kinesias. So what are you gonna replace it with? Yeah, why would you pick that?
That was just the only one I remembered.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I guess the strategy would be like find the sentence structure. And
Yes.
find the definite article, just take the towel out.
Yes. Yeah, that's very good. Yes.
That's false. So like,
Yeah.
like pretty much figure out what is the case of the sentence and then find the definite article that would fit that sentence. And just take the towel out because they're all like exactly the same. You just take the towel out except for the noun case.
Right.
You just add the sigma at the end of the thing.
Yeah. All right. So okay, that's exactly. So what do we got here then? That being the case.
I can say that, but I'm not good at.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's correct. That's exactly the thing. It's like figure out what is going to be replaced, right? And the article is mentioned in most of them, and so how are you going to do it? So here you have the man. Yeah, Kinesias is the man, is a Myrinian man, or is a man from Myrine place. And Kinesias is walking to the Acropolis. Now we want to put those two into a subordinated clause with the relative pronoun. How do we do that? Yeah, where were we gonna put the clause? All right, yeah, so you could do it like that. Kinesias hos badidze pros tein Acropolin, who is walking toward the Acropolis, aner esti Merines, he's from Merine, right? Or you could also do it, ho kinesias hos aner esti Merines, badidze pros tein Acropolin, right? That Kinesias, the guy from Merine, is walking to the Acropolis. So it's up to you how you do it, right? So the issue in the situation is which is more important to you? Is it that he's walking to the Acropolis, or do I need to know who the guy is that's walking to the Acropolis? And that's how you would decide it, because I'm really like slowing down to like, I don't know, 0.5 speed in how you guys produce sentences, how we normally produce sentences. 0.5 speed. Yeah, to figure out, okay, like we just do it just flows right out of us, right? This is to slow it right down to say, okay, what am I actually trying to say? Is the question, who's the guy that's walking toward the Acropolis? Or is the question, who's Kinesias? Right? So if it's who's the guy that's walking toward the Acropolis, then ho kinesias, hos, oh, sorry, hos aner esti merines prostate. So the guy, Kinesias is the guy who's walking toward is the Marinian guy that's walking towards the Acropolis. Who is he? Well, he's the Marinian guy. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's how I would do it.
Just say like, Marquinhos is the guy from Lumiere, and then I would just take like the period out, and then I'd put the. Like,
Yeah,
two,
Haas. Yeah.
And then.
And leave the rest of it. Yeah,
This out.
exactly. Because you don't have to actually do what we do in English, right? Where we put it in between. You can actually say hoc nisias aner esti merines hos badidze pros ten acropolin. Right? Because they don't have word order rules as strict as we do, right? So where relative clauses have to really follow almost immediately after whatever they're attached to in English. In Greek, you don't have to. But then that, of course, means that in Greek, you got to be more aware that, oh, that floating hos, what does it go with? Oh, it goes with Kinesias. Okay. All right. So, hi gunaikes ACN acropole. Hi gunaikes vosi. So the women are in the Acropolis. The women are shouting. So now we have our principle, our rule of thumb principle that Pythagoras came up with. So this should be no problem. Right? Yeah.
Is it? Well, I'm like, I feel inclined to put it in English word order in my, when I'm.
All right.
doing
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I said, I say women, that was.
Gunaikes.
Gunaikes. Hey, Gunaikes. Hey, Wosin, Estin, and Ten.
Yeah. Yeah. Only it's high. Yeah. So hi Gunaikes. Hi Buosin. AC and Te Acropole, right? Yeah. So that's one way to do it for sure. Yeah. The women who are shouting are in the Acropolis. You could say the other way too. You could say the women in the Acropolis, or those are the women in the Acropolis who are shouting, right?
Can you just say they are shouting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are shouting, but who are shouting? So it's women who are shouting in the Acropolis, and the ones who are shouting there. Those are the ones I'm interested in.
Women,
Yeah,
but they are shouting.
yeah. And then you can say TSD tutos T etheles legain. So what is this? Right? TSD tutos. And then T ethele leges. And what do you want to say? What do you mean? What do you want to say? So now we want to join that.
Say guy.
Well, yeah, of course you could say Kai, but we want to make this for Nicholas. So we want to say, so what, let's try to figure out what we want to say in English, right? So if we want to say, so he's saying, what is this? And what do you want to say? So what is it you want to say, right? What is this you want? What is it you want to say? How do you say that? What is it you want to say? What is this you want to say? So this is where that list of question words that went across, right, comes in. Because then you're going to use, yeah, go ahead.
Is it TSD? How do you say that?
So TSD tuto. Uh-huh.
TSD tuto.
Uh-huh.
For.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ho etheles lege. Right? Ho with the little accent on it, right? Ho. Because the T is going to be replaced by ho. What?
Is it that you want to say?
Yeah, what is it that you want to say? Or it can be hot tea, right? But definitely ho works. Yeah. So TSD tuto ho And you can tell it's gonna be ha because too tall, right? Has the ah. So ha lege, ethele leges, ethelace lege, right? So ha with the accent is what you'd get. That's relative there. All right. So hi gunaikes ethelusi akuen tus logus lege. Let me see. Is it lege? Is lysistrate tus logus. So tus logus is kind of repeated there. So hi gunaikes ethelusi akuen tus logus lege was it lysistrate tus logus. Okay, so the women want to hear the story or the arguments, and Lysistrata is telling the stories or the arguments. All right, so how would you do that? Remember, you're always trying to look for the thing that's repeated, right? And then you're gonna make that one of them into the relative that you need. So what's repeated? Tus logus, right? Yeah. Okay, so hi Gunaikes. If we go this way, the women want to hear the stories that Lysistrata is telling. Then it would be what?
Hey, sister.
So what? Yeah, okay. Hey lege, hey Lysistrata lege.
Hey, lege.
Mhm. But then what do you do with the relative? Because you have to put the relative has to come first. That's the only word order issue, is relative clause begins with the relative pronoun. That's really that. So even though it's in this sentence, tus logus is at the end, you gotta if you're gonna make it the relative, it needs to go at the beginning of the sentence where the sister is doing the talking, right? So hi gunaikes ethelusi akuen. So the women want to hear tus logus whose, right? Whose, you knock off the tau as your rule, knock off the tau, rough breathing, you're good to go. Whose lege lysistrate or lysistrate, right? So even though the tus logus is at the end of the sentence, but the relative pronoun needs to be at the beginning. That's no matter what its case is, it must be at the beginning, right? And so it would be whose lege lysistrate. All right, or if we did the other way, where we say, okay, Lysistrata tells the stories the women want to hear, that the women want to hear, right? It tells the stories that the women want to hear. Okay. So, what do we do
Wait, is
then?
it plural, the relative pronoun in this case?
Yeah, it has to be, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had it the other way. I
Tus.
thought you-
Yeah, no, so the thing we're replacing is tus logus, which is plural, right?
Okay, well.
Right? Yeah, so that's plural. So we need accusative because in its sentence. So this is the thing, you can tell what you're gonna what pronoun you need because whatever it is in its sentence, it's gonna be that case, right? So in this hi gunaikes ethelusi akuen tus logus, accusative. And in the other sentence, it's lege lysistrate tus logus, accusative. So both cases, it's going to be the accusative if you whichever one you do the relative to. So if we say Lysistrata tells the stories the women want to hear, right? Then we do whose hi gunaikes ethelusi akuen, right? Whose has to be first. You have to put the relative pronoun first. Just as in English, we have to do it too, right? So even though the noun it's referring to normally would be at the end of the sentence, in this case, like hai gunaikes ethelusi akue tus logus. right? But if you say, whose you can actually do this. Whose gunaikes ethelusi akuin lege lysistrata tus lagus, right? Because the whose is already telling you that that's some relative that's going with something. And then you have to wait till you get your tus lagus. Okay, that's what it is, right? But it still translates as the story that the sister is telling is the one the women want to hear. Right? All right. Ara, question, right? Ara gignoskes ton andra ho aner proserketai. All right, it's a question, yes or no question. Ara always sets up a yes or no question. Gignoskes or oista or episte, whichever one of our verbs of knowing you want to use here. Do you know the man? Tonandra, and then ho aner prosergeta, and the man is approaching. So, do you know the man who is approaching? So, how would we do that? Do you know the man who's approaching? So, what do you do with this? We have so far we got ara gugnoskes ton andra, man who's approaching.
So when you're looking for the case of the sentence, would you look at the compound sentence or would you just look at each part to pick your relative pronoun?
Yeah, you look at, so you've got the two sentences that you're going to put together with the subordinate clause, right?
Correct.
And the thing that's repeated in both, that's what's going to be the relative clause. Now the question is, which one is going to be the main clause, which is the subordinate clause? This one's clear because it's a question, right? And so the main clause is the ara gignoskes ton andra. So in that sentence, it's accusative. And then ho aner proserketai is nominative in this sentence, right? So if we're going to put it in a subordinate clause and we're going to ask, do you know the man who's approaching? Then what do we do with how are we going to replace the ho aner? Hos, right? Yeah, because he's nominative in the who is approaching sentence, right? So yeah, the easiest way is actually just to translate it into English. Your
Is the
relative,
translation like always
yeah, it's
like
gonna,
pretty much consistent?
Oh,
like,
absolutely, yeah.
who's,
Yes, that's
who-
what I was saying. Yeah, it's very easy. If you can master in English
Yeah.
when to use who, when to use whom, whose, and to whom, then it's not a problem because then you know, okay, who is nominative, whom is accusative, whose is genitive, and to whom is dative. You won't have a problem, right? But not everybody has mastered that. And so as a result, we're native speakers. And so we don't always, keep track of that kind of stuff. Everybody, because it's your own language, you just speak it to get people to know what you're saying, right? You don't really care about the rules, right?
So that one is nominative, you use the nominative.
Yeah,
singular case.
exactly, because ho aner is nominative, right? A ton andra is accusative. So now if it wasn't a question, let's say it wasn't a question, right? You know, I know the man who is, or you know the man who is coming, right?
Correct.
So that would be still ho aner, but the man who's coming is she knows, right? She knows him. The man, so the man whom she knows is coming, right? So then you would have to say ho aner proserketai, and then hon, and then whoever she is, gignoske, right? You see? So it depends, like, so whichever one you're putting in the subordinate position, that tells you what case you need to put the relative pronoun in. So if the gignoske sentence is the subordinate clause, then based on what Andra is doing in that sentence, it's accusative, then the relative pronoun matches that. Okay. All right, so let's see if I have one more. Is that okay? Okay, I think that was it for that. So this this slide show is on the website. So you guys can go back over it. But that's basically it for the relative clause. And we'll later on eventually learn. So the other way in which the Greeks can do a relative clause is to use a participle. So they've got like three different ways. One is just to stick stuff in between the article and the noun, right? Another way is to do this relative clause, which is just like we have in English. But then they have a third way where they use a participle, and we'll see that when that comes. But so they've got options, whereas in English we don't. Okay, so now what I want us to do is, apart from the Homer line, or adapted Homer line, beginning with hoi men un barbaroi bradeus proser contatai, we want to put this sentence, this whole stuff, passage into the imperfect, because right now it's in the present, right? And so this is a workout on how do we do it, right? So we have in the translation then is so the barbarians were approaching slowly toward the city. This is how it's what we want to say it in English. And the Athenians were in a state of let's say a loss. They were at a loss and they were fearful. Okay. So that's what we want to say. Because it says they are approaching and the Athenians are at a loss and they are fearful. So what we want to say, they were approaching, right? So we need to turn pros erkontai and aporusi and fubuntai into the imperfect. All right. So let us look at for a second what Masternardi does. Okay, so for paradigms. So we did this yesterday, but we're going to go over it again. All right, so with omega verbs in the present stem, right? The imperfect is here, right? And so the endings are on, as, amen, et, on. That's the endings that you're going to put on. And if it's a consonant, you use the syllabic augment, that is, you throw an epsilon on the front of the stem of the word. And if it's a vowel, then you lengthen the vowel according to the rule. So alphas, alphas become long alphas, short alphas become etas, this kind of thing, that whole chart that's on the slideshow. Okay, so now that's if it's active. So I think your question last to me there, Ash, was what about middle passive?
Well, I was asking specifically about irregular verbs.
Oh yeah, but let's go this first.
Understand this.
Okay, well but if it's middle passive, then it's the epsilon again, if depending on the verb, but then it's main u ta methas the enta. Right? That's the situation if it's a middle. All right, or if it's a my verb, right? So it started off like my verb. Okay, and then then we had a whole list of the issue with the irregular verbs, like the verb to be. Is that what you're talking about? The verb to be?
Yeah, like, well, because I have the
Yeah, because I did that. Okay, so we did that yesterday. So that was here. So if we go into slideshow here, slideshow is now available. The verb to be, the irregular verbs. Yeah, here. Okay, so did I not have the irregular verbs in this? No, yeah, here they are. Yeah. So here you are. So the verb to be is here. You just have to memorize it. There's no rule, right? It's then the middle passive of,
the irregular verbs.
Yeah.
these are the irregular verbs.
Yes, but what's the middle passive?
They don't have a middle
Okay,
passive.
so that was.
That's
so
why
that's
they're,
just
yeah,
middle
yeah,
passive.
yeah, yeah. Though in case of, Famey, it does.
Okay, where can I
Yeah,
see
yeah,
that? 'Cause
yeah.
I couldn't find that in the paragraph.
Yeah. No, Femi doesn't. Yeah. So if it does, yeah. So if he doesn't have it in the paradigms, it doesn't have it.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's the only. part
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
passive
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
missed.
Definitely. Yeah. 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 You can cross that out. But yeah,
And
and
the
that's
only other thing that I didn't understand how to fill out was my verbs.
so yeah, those are the middle passive. My alpha your
Yeah, like I didn't understand how to do the imperfect active or imperfect middle passive for my because.
me
the-
verbs. The me verbs.
No, my, because there wasn't anything about that in the video, but there's 3 in this packet.
Yeah, my verbs are middle passive.
Okay, how do I do the imperfect active for my verbs?
That's what we're gonna do right now.
Okay,
Because
great.
it turns out
And how
that
do you do the middle passive? There wasn't anything in the video about it.
so yeah, so here, well, there is, I don't, maybe just, it wasn't clear. That it might just not have been clear, but it definitely was. So like here, the middle passive endings are here.
For my,
These are, yeah. Because we see
Okay.
over here, bulumai,
okay,
so then it's bulumain. So my becomes main, a becomes u,
okay, so it's just the.
etai becomes eta, right? Metha becomes metha, sta, they stay the same, but then bulon tai, bulon ta.
Okay, I was just unclear if it had its own endings or if it was omega endings.
No, all of them, now this, if it's a didomi or whatever, all of them, if it's a my verb, absolutely it's gonna be like this.
Got it.
Yes, right? So let's just look at, get back to what I was gonna do here with this, where did I put the reading Greek thing? Here it is. Okay, yeah, so our first one would have answered the question, you see, because our first verb is a my verb, right? Pros erkon tai, erkon mai, right? So pros erkon tai, we're faced with pros erkon tai. We need to make that a past tense, an imperfect. So what do we do? In terms of the ending, we can start with the ending first, right? What are we going to do with the ending? It's on tie ending. On ties become on tie becomes, let's get it over here. On tie becomes on tall, right? On tie, on tall, right? And then you have to put a augment of some kind on, but on tie becomes on tall. All right, so let's go back to that. All right, so now we have on tall. And then what we use with the pros erkon type part, the front part. So it's got a preposition pros. So that means you can't put the augment in front of the preposition. So the augment goes in between, goes on the stem, right? It goes on the stem. So the stem of this verb is erkon tai, erkomai, right? Erkon tai. So what do we do when it begins with a vowel? You lengthen the vowel, right? Yeah. So epsilons become etas, right? So then it comes pros erkon tai, eta, and then, right? So pi, rho, omicron, sigma, eta, rho, chi, omicron, nu, tai, omicron, on tall, right? So pros erkon tall. See that? So how, yeah, so we get barbaroi bradios pros erkon tall, eta, and all at the end. All right. Okay, then now we have Athenaioi, aporusi. So this is an aporeo epsilon contract, right? So usis become on, right? Usis become on, right? If you go back to our thing, we'll see here, usi on, right? Ending usi on. So, and it's an epsilon contract. So it's apore, and we're gonna put on with in front of epsilon, so that's gonna be oo. Right, so then gonna have, and it's an alpha verb, so what happens to alpha becomes? Alpha is gonna have to be lengthened, and it's gonna become what? No, no, no,
Ada,
eta, yeah. Yeah, this alpha is not long, so it's eta, right, yeah. And one of the tips is if we knew the principal parts, which you guys don't have to memorize it, but if you did, you'll see that the air is eta as well. So that would tell you, okay, it's gotta be eta. All right, so eta, so air, aporun, omicron, upsilon, nu, right? Right, because usi becomes on, right? And this is usi with the circumflex tells you there's some kind of contraction happening, right? And the contraction that generates u is either omicron or epsilon. Doesn't really matter if it's that doing that, then it's probably un, right? Because if it's omicron, omicron or epsilon omicron, you're still going to get un anyway, right? So do you guys follow what I'm saying? Yeah, in the contraction rules, right? So it's eta, so aporusi, eta pi omicron, omicron, upsilon nu. So the Athenians aporun kai phobunto, ephobunto, right? So you just put, see what's happening is you're just switching out the endings, right? You're adding augment and switching out the ending. So it phobuntai then becomes phobunto. So you just put epsilon in front, you turn that I into an aw. Right? You see that? Okay, so now we've got the Athenians were in at a loss and they were afraid. And then we don't need any verbs here for a while because pole, mengar, hey, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But if we're going to use the verb to be, let's see, right? For many are or great is the army of the Spartans, or sorry, Spartans, the Persians. So we need to say was. So what do we do there? So we need third person singular for was. That's the irregular verb. So where'd I put those irregular verbs? There. Here is it here. No, what did I do with it? Thought it popped out. Yeah, I'll go back down here. Right? So the verb to be, this just has to be memorized. There's just like no way to extrapolate a weight into it. So third person singular is ein, right? In the plural, it's easier. It's going to be amen, eta, or aestha, or ason, because the endings for me verbs are men, te, son. So okay, we could probably extrapolate the plural, but the singular not so much. So it's ein or aestha, ein. So our story here. So we could throw in an ein if we wanted, but we don't need to. The verb to be that's often why they leave it out. It's not a thing here. All right, but then we move down to tas men un thusias tois theos thusius hoi Athenaioi. So the Athenians are sacrificing sacrifices to the gods. Now we want to say the Athenians were sacrificing sacrifices to the gods. So thusius is our verb. So how do we make that into the appropriate form?
Just be whatever that means.
Yeah, thu, and what's the ending for what usis become? Usis become. Yeah, we just did this. You just did this, yeah. Yeah, we just did it. Usis
It
become,
wasn't all times, y'all.
yeah. Usis become on. Usi becomes on, right? So ontai becomes onta. Etai becomes eta. UC becomes on. Yeah. So here we go. Yeah. So UC becomes on. So it's ethuson. Ethuon. Sorry, ethuon. Ethuon. Epsilon, theta, upsilon, omicron, nu. Ethuon. Hoi athenaioi. And then polai eukontai, right? They were praising a lot. So again, we'd have to lengthen the vowel because it begins with a vowel. So eta, eu, erkonta, or ekonta, right? So this word here is you lengthen the vowel, the epsilon, into an eta, and then you have eu, konta, right? Ace binusi. Binusi. So what happens to the ending? Binusi, usis become on, right? So at least we got binon. So you have to put it bino, right? So it's going to be an epsilon in here. Ace binon. Ace binon, right? In between the ace and the bino, right? Ace binon. All right. And then the last one is machontai, right? So what happens? Machontai. Yeah, a machonta, right? A machonta, right? The epsilon in front, a machonta. Great, great. All right, so then homework will be in a second on the website, but it's basically to turn this section, the second half of it, into the past tense, imperfect. Okay, so all the verbs, I've underlined them, and you'll just turn them into the appropriate matching imperfect form. Okay,
And then, so when we're making it past tense, you don't even have to worry about the word order. It's just-
no, you're just swapping out the verb. Yeah, that's all we're doing. You're just swapping out the verb, making it a past tense, imperfect tense. Okay,
Is there a difference between past and imperfect?
the past and imperfect. Yeah,
Like,
you gotta watch the video. Yeah, I went into good detail as to what the difference was. Yeah.
So how do you my verbs in imperfect?
That's what we just did.
What are the endings? I'm confused on.
So-
Because are they
so-
omega or no?
No, so my verbs are the middle passive. So the middle passive is the same whether it's a me verb or a my verb.
But so. like, on
Omega
top
verb
of
or
it, It
yeah.
has imperfect active for a my verb.
Which verb is it?
Oh, there's three. I have the.
My, right? Yeah.
And then I have, there's also ergomai.
Yeah. So these are these verbs, right? My main.
Yes, but. I feel like I don't understand what endings to use for imperfect active. What endings do I use?
Oh, in that, yeah, okay, those are deponent verbs. Okay, yeah. So they already start out as my, they don't have an active.
So I can just
You
cross
can
those.
cross it out. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
There's
So that's
nothing in the video.
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
I can't-
yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So that is, yeah, you're
Okay,
right.
so
So
it's
your
just like
instinct to
middle-
cross it out is correct.
So
yes.
it's middle passive and then.
Yeah,
present.
but yeah, it's active in that it's deponent because they only have that form,
Yeah,
but they have an active meaning, but they're
so I can do the translation for the conjugation for present active, indicative and imperfect.
yeah, but you can't
So it
do
doesn't
the
matter.
active, right? Exactly. Yeah, but a lot of verbs have all three. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got all the other ones that had all three, but then these ones, I was like, I don't understand.
Yeah. All right, guys. So ready for the weekend?
Do you want both of these?
Well, hold on to them. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, yeah, you too. I'm going to, all right, so I'm gonna stop the video.